Okay, Kevin, thanks very much. In section 3, basically I'm just going to ask you some questions. I'd like you to speak clearly into the microphone, thanks. And the first question is, can you tell me about what was unusual on your flight in section 2?
Do you mean before I departed or
I think you had an incident on departure.
Well, the first thing I remember is before departure there were some cones on the taxiway which prevented us from continuing with the taxi route that we were given.
That's right.
And we couldn't get around those, so we requested they be removed. Not sure why they were there, but yeah, I guess that's a problem, a bit of a hazard if we taxied into those.
Sorry to interrupt. I remember you had another incident just after takeoff. Can you tell me what happened?
Oh yes, we took off from runway 15 and just on getting airborne, there was a bird strike, and from memory we ingested one bird or two birds into the engine, and one hit the windscreen, and yeah, we had to conduct a return after departure. Nothing too serious, but I think it was
And I understand you had to dump fuel as well.
Oh yes, and we had to dump fuel because it's reasonably heavy aircraft, so yeah, we had to come back in.
Okay, if I can direct your attention to the screen in front of you again, I'd like you to look at the two pictures showing what happened during takeoff in section 2. I'd like you firstly to tell me how these pictures connected.
Okay, well, picture 1 here shows my aircraft. I guess it's my aircraft, yeah. My aircraft departing, it's just airborne, and looks like hitting a flock of birds. That's probably around the incident that we had a bird strike. Quite a large flock of birds. I can see maybe, I don't know, 30 birds there, and I guess that's just before it entered the engine. Picture 2 there, there's an engineer looking at the engine. I think it's an engineer, and the engine cowling's been removed, so probably it's after the incident. It's after we returned to Curran Airport. I guess we've changed to another aircraft, and this is the maintenance operation that's being conducted to repair the engine after the bird strike.
And after the bird strike in section 2, can you tell me again, what did you need to do?
Sorry, after the bird strike?
Immediately after the bird hit your aircraft, what did you need to do?
We had to climb to about 5,000 feet, I think, and we dumped fuel, maybe 2,000 feet. Yeah, we had to dump fuel, then we returned to land. Yeah. Okay.
Next question is more general. Why are birds hazardous?
Oh, for several reasons, I guess. The first reason is just like in section 2 now, is that they can enter the engine and cause an engine failure. That's clearly a hazard. Second reason is they could disrupt traffic flow around an airport because they're a hazard, that it could cause congestion in the air with other traffic. That's a problem at my airport where I operate, so because it's near the sea. Maybe there's another reason there's a hazard, is that they could actually damage part of the aircraft other than the engine, and yeah.
Okay, and what other situations could cause pilots to return after departure?
Let me think. Well, any engine failure requires the pilot to return immediately after takeoff. Structural damage, like a lightning strike or something like that, could be a performance problem, like the hydraulics, electrical failure, even a fire that could happen on takeoff. It could be a problem with the undercarriage. Lots of problems actually, but most common ones are to do with engine performance on takeoff.
Okay. And tell me about a situation you have experienced which required you to return after takeoff.
You mean recently, or
maybe just in terms of your experience generally?
One was recently, maybe last last year. I don't have a lot of experience, but last year I was the first officer, and there was a lot of, when we took off, there was a lot of wind shear. And the aircraft ahead of us was too close for whatever reason. The separation wasn't right, and we didn't actually go back to land, but we had to maintain a low altitude for quite a while.
Good, thank you. Let's now discuss some more general aviation issues, and I'd like you to give your opinion and ideas. Firstly, I guess both the captain and the first officer make decisions on the flight deck. Over the last 10 years, what has changed in the way decisions are made on the flight deck in your airline?
Well, in the last 10 years, it's probably before I was flying, but I know that the big issue that's come in is crew resource management, CRM. That's certainly had a big impact on how we operate at Pacific. Pacific International used to only have the captain making all the decisions. In the last 10 years, they've encouraged all the crew members to discuss the action plans if there's either a small situation or even an emergency, to be more consultative with the crew.
And do you think these changes have been good or bad for pilots?
Oh, definitely good, much better.
Why is that?
I can feel that we sometimes the captain, for example, is really overloaded with work, and they might not be necessarily making the right decision. So sharing those ideas doesn't just help the other crew know what's going on, but sometimes it can make sure that the decision is right. Even in that example in Section 2, if there's a bird strike, these days we would talk about it. What are we going to do? Who's going to contact the controller? Rather than just one person. And
Kevin, what language do you use to communicate with your crew on the flight deck?
We use German.
Oh,
sometimes
really?
English, but mostly German.
Really? Yeah. And with the air traffic controller?
In international airspace, we use English.
Okay, that's interesting. How do you feel about switching between your language and English, and how does this affect the way you do your job?
It's a very interesting question. For me, it's sometimes we get confused between who we're talking to. Well, it's a very good question. I think when we use German in the flight deck, it's good because we know we're comfortable. We know that that's our language. It's easy to communicate with the captain and even the purser. When they call us, we use German. But when we switch to English with air traffic control, it does sort of have an impact, because sometimes we have to slow down and think carefully about what we want to say. And sometimes switching between German and English sort of doesn't add to the stress, but it makes you have to think in two different languages. For me, it's okay, but some of my colleagues, this is a bigger problem. They really don't like using English with the air traffic controllers, just because they feel it's their level is too low.
Okay, interesting.
And there's another issue, and another issue is that often around our airports, the busy airports, although they use a lot of English, like with the British Airways pilots, some of the German pilots still want to use German.
Really?
And I think that's a big problem, because the British pilots, they don't necessarily know what instructions are being given by control if they use German.
Yeah,
so I think this should be in English, all of it.
Okay, great. I guess this question's related. How do you think the way pilots and air traffic controllers communicate will change in the future?
Using English, you mean?
Perhaps thinking more about maybe technology and the nature of communication.
Well, using technology, there's a big move to use data link, CPDLC in Europe, and that's certainly reducing the amount of communication that's done over the radio when in routine situations.
Yes.
And I guess that frees up the airways for those situations where communication is really important.
Okay.
Not just emergencies, but misunderstandings or needing to amend routes and things like that. That frees it up for that.
Okay.
But also, I think in the future it will change, probably even the language, because I know that ICAO is encouraging both pilots and controllers to use more more general English
Yes.
to resolve understandings. I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll probably become more important, and it'll encourage more controllers and pilots to actually learn English,
Yep.
and I think that's a good thing, as I said.
Great. All right, the last question today, Kevin, is a very general one. What problems in aviation are facing your region in the next 5 years?
Oh, that's an easy question for me.
Okay.
Very easy. The airspace is becoming much more crowded,
Yep.
much more congested.
Okay.
In parts of Europe, there's a push for more smaller aircraft than bigger aircraft.
Okay.
And of course that means there's more traffic in the sky. And even some of the airports that I'm using these days, in the last 2 or 3 years, just the congestion to get from the gate to the line-up position means probably 3 years ago it took 5 or 6 minutes.
Yep.
We're experiencing delays of 15 minutes or more.
Okay.
And I think that's, one, the airports, there's not enough airports
Yep.
to service the volume of traffic, and two, even within those airports there's a lot of congestion and
Okay.
both inbound and outbound traffic. So I think the biggest thing is that they need more airports and more infrastructure and probably more airways to cater for more
Okay.
traffic.
So that leads on to my last question, part 2 of this question. What can be done to help limit these problems?
Definitely. Where my main airport, I think they need to build a new runway.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 2 runways at the moment. We need a 3rd one just to allow for more traffic flow. And probably there's a bit of restricted airspace. Remove the restrictions about the airspace and the curfews.
Yes. Okay.
There's a lot of curfews, especially in some of the bigger European cities, and that puts a lot of pressure on us meeting our schedules.
Okay.
And it's pretty expensive if we,
I can imagine. Okay, Kevin, we might finish there. Thank you very much, and good luck. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.